The rain had been falling for so long that the whole street seemed to breathe in gray. Inside Rosa's diner, the neon open sign flickered against the window like a heartbeat refusing to quit. Coffee hissed on the burner, plates clattered, and Grace Miller pressed a damp towel across the counter, pretending the ache in her shoulders wasn't there. She liked the early evening hour, right before the dinner rush, when the place smelled of burnt espresso and warm bread, when she could almost forget the life she used to have. Almost. The door chimed. Grace didn't look up immediately, but she felt the shift, the kind of silence that falls when someone important walks in, or someone who thinks he is. A man stepped out of the wet, shaking droplets from the shoulders of an impossibly expensive charcoal coat. Ethan Cole. She knew the name the moment she saw the monogram on the briefcase. Everyone in New York did. Billionaire. CEO. The kind of man who treated the city like a chessboard. He moved toward the counter with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "Black coffee. To go," he said, eyes still scanning whatever crisis was playing out on his phone screen. His voice was smooth, but a little frayed at the edges, like someone who hadn't slept in days. Grace poured the coffee, her hands steady out of habit, though her stomach tightened. Ethan Cole in a tiny diner at the edge of Midtown. That alone felt like a plot twist. When she slid the cup across the counter, he finally looked at her. Not a glance. A searching. Like he was cataloging her, hair pulled back, cheap watch, tired eyes, before coming to a conclusion she didn't like. And then he said it. "I'll give you $1,000, he murmured, "if you pretend to be my wife for one night." The spoon Tommy was stirring sugar with clattered to the floor. Someone in a booth coughed. Even the rain outside seemed to pause at the absurdity of it. Grace blinked. "Excuse me?" Ethan spoke like a man announcing a business merger, not a ridiculous proposition. "There's a charity gala tonight, a big one. My mother will be there, and she's persistent. I need a buffer. Just come with me, smile a little, stand at my side. 3 hours. I'll pay you 1,000. Cash." He said cash like it was a magic word, like he'd used it 100 times to make problems disappear. Grace's jaw tightened. She took a slow breath, not trusting herself to speak. When she finally did, her voice was calm enough to scare even her. "You walk in here," she said softly. "Don't bother learning my name. Assume you know my life from a 5-second glance, and then offer me money to pretend I belong next to you?" Ethan's expression didn't shift much, just a faint crease between his brows, irritation mixing with surprise. "It's just a business arrangement," he said. "You're on your feet all day. I figured you could use it." There it was. The part that stung, not the offer. The assumption. Grace set the coffee pot down with deliberate precision. "Keep your 1,000, she said. Her voice was steady, but she could feel heat climbing up her neck. "I serve coffee, Mr. Cole, but I'm not for sale." "Mi niña?" Rosa appeared from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands. Her warm eyes flicked between them. "Everything okay here?" Grace didn't look away from Ethan. "Just fine," she said. "This gentleman was just leaving." A muscle twitched in Ethan's jaw. For a second, just a second, Grace thought she saw something like regret flash in his eyes. But then he reached for his wallet, pulled out a $100 bill, and placed it on the counter. "For the coffee," he murmured. Grace pushed it back. "We don't need your charity either." He hesitated, a flicker of something she couldn't name, before turning toward the door. The bell chimed again as he disappeared into the rain, swallowed by the city. Grace exhaled shakily. Her heart was pounding, but she refused to let it show. She grabbed a napkin from the dispenser, wiping a smear of coffee off the counter. When she lifted the napkin, she caught sight of the $100 bill sitting exactly where he'd left it. A bright, arrogant square of green against the stainless steel. A reminder. A warning. And the first crack in a life she'd tried so hard to keep simple. Behind her, the neon sign buzzed, flickering once, like the universe clearing its throat before changing everything. Grace didn't sleep. The rain that night wasn't just rain. It was a steady drum on the roof of her tiny walk-up, each drop tapping out the same question she refused to answer. Why did a billionaire look at her, a diner waitress wiping counters, and ask her to pretend she was his wife? She didn't want to admit it, but the offer lingered. Not because of the money, because of the look in his eyes right before he left. Like he wasn't used to being wrong, and her refusal cracked something he didn't know he had. By morning, Grace had decided to bury the whole thing. She tied her apron, twisted her hair into a bun, and stepped into Rosa's diner at dawn. The smell of bacon, the sizzle of the grill, the clatter of plates. Home. Safe. Predictable. "Nina, you look like you fought the rain all night," Rosa said, raising an eyebrow. Grace opened her mouth to give some harmless answer, but then the door chimed. She didn't have to turn around. She felt him again. Ethan Cole. Dry this time, composed. Suit sharp enough to cut through the morning haze. And beside him, a woman in pearls and a navy coat that screamed old money. His mother. Great. "Table for two," Ethan said, eyes finding Grace instantly. Grace swallowed hard. She grabbed two menus and led them to a corner booth, pretending she couldn't feel Ethan's gaze walking up her spine. When she set the menus down, Ethan spoke quietly. "Grace, can we talk? Just 5 minutes." She almost said no. Almost. But then Rosa nodded from behind the counter. A silent go on. Grace followed Ethan toward a quiet corner near the kitchen. Up close, she could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the cracks in the billionaire facade. "Look," he started, "I came to apologize. Yesterday I was rude, completely out of line." Grace folded her arms. He took a breath. "I still need your help. Not because of the money, though I'll pay you more, but because I'm desperate." His voice didn't sound like a CEO. It sounded like a man drowning quietly. "My mother wants to parade me in front of another perfect match tonight, and the gala is important for my company. I can't deal with her schemes on top of everything else." "So your solution is hiring a stranger?" Grace asked. "No," he said softly. "My solution is asking the only person who's looked me in the eye in months without wanting something." Her heartbeat stuttered. "Ethan, you don't know anything about me. Then let me be honest." He lowered his voice. "My fiancée cheated on me. With someone close to me. She helped steal company secrets. The fallout nearly destroyed everything I built." Grace inhaled sharply. Her own betrayal, different details, same wound, flared like a ghost. "Grace, you don't have to say yes, but if you do, I'll make it worth your time. $5,000. 5. Her breath caught. That was 3 months of rent. A bandage over a bleeding life. But it wasn't the money that tipped her. It was the honesty in his eyes. Raw, unexpected. What exactly would I have to do? Show up at 7. Walk in with me. Smile a little. Pretend we've been married 3 months. Then you go home. No strings. Her instincts screamed run, but something quieter whispered, "You owe yourself a night where you get to feel like more than a ghost." "Fine," Grace said, "but 3 terms. You don't ask about my past. After tonight, we're done, and I want half the money up front." Ethan didn't hesitate. He extended his hand. "Deal." The moment their palms touched, something electric shot through her. Ethan felt it too. His eyes flickered. Grace snatched her hand back. 6 p.m., she said. "I'll meet you here." Hours later, she stood in her tiny apartment, staring at 3 massive boxes that had arrived with her name on them. Inside, evening gowns, shoes, accessories. Luxury she hadn't touched in years. Grace slipped into the deep green dress. It hugged her like she remembered clothes used to, like she still mattered. She stared at herself in the mirror. A woman she'd forgotten. At 6 sharp, she stepped outside the diner. Ethan's black car rolled up. He stepped out in a tuxedo that made half the street stop. But it was his expression, when he saw her, that stole her breath. "Grace," he whispered. "You look—" She raised a brow. "Don't start lying already." He laughed, real, unguarded, and then he slid a fake diamond ring onto her finger. "Just for tonight," he murmured. Grace stared at the ring catching the streetlight. A symbol of a lie, a night out of her old life, and the first step into something neither of them had planned. The wind lifted the hem of her green dress as the car door clicked shut behind her. A soft whisper of a choice she could never take back. The ballroom shimmered like a glass palace. Gold chandeliers, polished marble. The hum of Manhattan's richest people, pretending they weren't watching one another. Grace held her posture the way Ethan had coached her, shoulders back, chin lifted, yet every step across that gleaming floor felt like walking into a past she'd buried. Ethan stayed close, one hand resting lightly at her back, a gesture meant for show, except it didn't feel like acting. "You're doing great," he whispered, breath brushing her ear. She didn't answer. If she opened her mouth, she wasn't sure what would come out. They approached Ethan's mother first. Grace braced. Elizabeth Cole was elegant, sharp-eyed, and the kind of woman who could spot a lie in any room. She took one slow look at Grace, hair pinned, green dress catching the chandelier light, hands steady, and her expression softened into something Grace didn't expect. Approval. "You're much lovelier than the photos," Elizabeth said warmly. Grace blinked. "Photos?" Ethan stiffened. "Mother." Elizabeth laughed. "Relax. I meant the charity page from this morning. You know the reporters track your every move." Grace forced a polite smile, but her stomach sank. She hadn't realized people were already watching. The next hour was a blur. Faces, handshakes, champagne flutes clinking like crystal bells. Ethan introduced her as my wife, and each time her heart stumbled a little harder. And then, Marcus Cole, married. I never thought I'd see the day. The voice cut through like a cold knife. Grace turned and froze. A woman in a blood-red gown stepped forward, smile razor-sharp. Vivian Hart, Ethan's ex, the one who shattered him. Grace had seen photos of her in business magazines. Up close, Vivian was worse, beautiful in a way that felt intentional, sculpted, calculated. "So," Vivian purred, eyes sliding over Grace like she was a clearance item. "This is your new wife." Grace opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan stepped in. "We're not discussing this here." "Oh, relax," Vivian said, her smile widening. "I'm just curious how long you've known her. A week? A day? Long enough to run a background check?" Grace felt heat crawl up her neck. "What's your point?" Ethan said sharply. Vivian's gaze flicked to Grace. "The point is, I know a performance when I see one." And then she leaned in, whispering where only Grace could hear. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts." Before Grace could react, Vivian's father, Charles Hart, one of the board members, stepped into the circle. He nodded politely at Grace, a nod that carried zero respect. "So this is the woman who convinced Ethan to rush into secret vows," he said. "Quite convenient timing, considering the merger vote next month." Grace felt the oxygen thin. Vivian smirked. Elizabeth frowned, confused. Ethan's jaw locked. Grace could feel the room turn, subtle shifts, whispers, eyes lingering too long. They smelled blood. "I need air," she whispered, slipping away before Ethan could stop her. She pushed through the terrace doors, cold night air hitting her like a slap. Her pulse thudded in her ears. This was a mistake. All of it. She should have never worn this dress, this ring, this lie. Then, a commotion behind her. Footsteps, voices rising, and a scream. Grace spun back toward the ballroom. Vivian stood at the center, mascara streaked, dress torn at the strap, pointing directly at Grace. "She attacked me," Vivian sobbed. "I went to talk to her, and she grabbed me. She pushed me. She threatened me." Gasps. Camera phones rising like a wall. Security moving fast. Ethan rushed in front of Grace. "She didn't touch you." "Not true," Charles Hart announced. "I saw her heading toward the terrace alone minutes ago. Plenty of time to harm my daughter." Grace's throat closed. She had gone to the terrace, alone. Anyone could twist that. Ethan stepped forward. "Check the security cameras. They'll show—" "No cameras in the women's lounge," Vivian snapped. Convenient. Grace could practically hear the verdict forming in the room's collective mind. Waitress. Pretending. Gold digger. Violent. Everything she'd rebuilt. Her composure, her anonymity, crumbled. And then, another voice entered the circle like a trap closing. "I can confirm," the man said smoothly, stepping through the crowd, "that Grace Miller has a complicated history." Grace's heart stopped. Daniel Shaw, her ex-fiancé, her betrayer, the man who ruined her life. "Oh my God," she whispered. Daniel smiled at the crowd with the ease of a man lying to a mirror. 3 years ago," he said, "she faced ethics violations, fraud, evidence tampering. She's a disgraced attorney. She's not who she claims to be." The room erupted. Grace felt the world tilt, past and present colliding like a punch. Ethan turned to her, eyes wide, hurt flickering under fear, under disbelief. It wasn't doubt, but it wasn't trust yet either. The lights shimmered overhead. Flashbulbs burst. Whispers grew into a roar. And Grace. Grace felt the fake diamond ring on her finger growing heavier by the second. A symbol of a lie she'd agreed to. A spotlight she never wanted. And a war she thought she'd escaped coming back with sharp teeth. The last thing she saw before security closed in was her reflection in a mirrored column. The green dress, the exposed truth, the storm gathering behind her eyes. Not the imposter they believed, but a fighter cornered, and the night was far from over. Grace expected the world to end in that ballroom, but instead, everything paused. Security hesitated. Guests held their breath. And Ethan stepped forward, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a man making a choice. "Enough," he said, voice echoing off crystal and marble. Vivian froze mid-sob. Daniel blinked, thrown off his rhythm. Even the cameras lowered a fraction. Ethan reached for Grace's hand, not the fake one he'd given her, but her real hand, shaking in plain sight. "She didn't touch you," he told Vivian, "and I know a staged performance when I see one." Vivian's jaw clenched. Daniel tried again. "Marcus, you don't understand." "No," Ethan cut in sharply. "You don't understand. I don't care about whatever story you think you're spinning." He turned to Grace, and something shifted. In him, in her, in the room. "If you say you didn't do what they're claiming, I believe you." Grace couldn't breathe. Belief. One word. One lifeline after drowning for 3 years. She didn't trust her voice, but she squeezed his hand back, just once, and Ethan nodded like that was enough. But the universe wasn't done. A sudden commotion near the entrance, people stepping aside, murmuring. FBI jackets, 2 agents, a warrant in hand. The taller one spoke calmly, projecting so the whole ballroom heard it. "We're here for Daniel Shaw and Vivian Hart. Step forward." Vivian's painted smile cracked. "What? This is a mistake. My father—" "Your father is in custody," the agent replied, "and both of you are implicated in insider trading and evidence tampering." Gasps rippled across the room like a physical shockwave. It wasn't Ethan who looked vindicated. It was Grace. Daniel's mask slipped first. The smooth confidence evaporated, leaving only panic. "Grace," he hissed, desperate now. "Think about what you're doing." She stepped closer, not in anger, but in clarity. "I'm not doing anything," she said softly. Your choices finally caught up. The agents cuffed him. His eyes stayed locked on hers until he disappeared through the doors. The past being dragged out of her life at last. Vivian went next, hissing and snapping, and insisting she knew important people, her heels scraping the marble like claws. And then, silence again. Except this time, it felt different. Not fear, not scandal. Relief. Ethan exhaled slowly, turning back to Grace. "You okay?" he asked. She expected her answer to crumble, expected the shaking to return, the old panic, the instinct to hide. Instead, she felt steady, maybe for the first time since her fall. "I will be," she said. He managed a soft smile. "Let's get out of here." They slipped through a back exit, avoiding the cameras, the whispers, the wreckage of the evening. Outside, Manhattan air hit them, cold, clean, alive. Ethan led her toward his car but didn't open the door. Instead, he leaned against it and studied her carefully. "Grace, I need you to know something," he said quietly. "Tonight wasn't fake. Not for me." She swallowed hard, her heartbeat too loud in her ears. "I don't want an arrangement anymore," he continued. "I want us, real." Grace looked away, absorbing that in fragments. Her life had burned down once because she trusted the wrong man. What if she did it again? "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm not perfect. I'm still rebuilding. I'm messy and scared and—" "Good," he said gently. "I don't want perfect." He reached into his pocket, not the tuxedo one he used for business cards or expensive pens. A smaller pocket, close to his chest. He held something cupped in his hand. "I want this." He opened his palm. A sapphire ring glowed against his skin. Deep blue, soft fire catching the streetlight. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said quietly. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. But I am asking you to take a second chance with me." A second chance. Something she'd never let herself believe she deserved. The city noise faded. Even her heartbeat softened. Grace lifted her hand. Ethan slipped the ring, not onto her ring finger, but onto the middle one. A promise, not a claim. A beginning, not a demand. When their fingers brushed, she felt the same quiet spark she felt the first time he touched her in the diner. But this time, it didn't scare her. It steadied her. "I'm willing to try," she said. His smile wasn't sharp like before. It wasn't guarded. It was something rare, hopeful. He opened the car door for her, and as she stepped inside, the city lights reflected off the sapphire in a soft blue shimmer. A symbol of everything she'd been running from, and everything she was finally ready to run toward.